Thank you. Thank you so much, Mark. This is a real honor and just a real privilege to be here. And the IJS community means so much to me. I was in the third rabbinic cohort, and those relationships are still so special to me. And the Torah that I learned in those years through IJS are still running through my veins. And of course, all the Chavraya work. This is an incredible institution. What a gift to the Jewish community and the community at large. So thank you, Mark, for everything you're doing and all that IJS is doing. To teach in front of my teacher is a little daunting and a bit of a privilege, and a great privilege, I should say. So thank you for inviting me. Well, shalom, everyone. We'll do a little bit of learning and then a little bit of sitting. So let's already begin to open that heart space and just kind of like open the spirit a bit to these words of Torah to allow them to enter into our hearts. If you'd like, if it feels good for you to just roll the shoulders, just kind of be aware of what tension you're holding, kind of allowing whatever it took to get you here to melt away so that you can fully be present with the intention of studying and being together and holding this sacred space together. Be a nice deep inhale. Exhale. And so, since we are going to be delving into a little bit of Torah and rabbinics, a blessing to anchor us in the practice, thanking God for the commandment to be absorbed in words of Torah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Amen. Thank you, God, for giving us the privilege to soak up, to be busy with these words of Torah. Well, this week's Torah portion is Titzaveh, and it opens with the lighting of the menorah. And I'll share my screen in just a moment, or Kat will help us with that, but just some words of introduction. That this tradition of lighting the menorah is reflected in today's eternal light, right? That ner tamid that you'll see in pretty much any sanctuary you enter in a modern day synagogue or temple. It's the only commandment we practice associated with the ancient tabernacle that is still with us today. So why has light, this ner tamid, this eternal light that's derived from the menorah, why is it seemingly a favorite symbol of God? Well, perhaps because light itself cannot be seen, and we only become aware of light when it enables us to see other things. Similarly, we don't see God necessarily, but we become aware of God's presence when God is illuminating beauty in the world, goodness that we share with each other, and maybe that experience that bubbles up from within of that bit of spaciousness and illumination that we allow ourselves to feel in meditation. Fire is a symbol of God's presence. Fire itself is not the object. The interesting part of fire is the process, the liberating of potential energy that's stored in the source of combustion, like a wick or a log. But it needs something. It needs a spark. It needs attention. There's an action that's required. So let's take a look at the first verse of this week's Torah portion. We'll share our screen so we can see that verse together. It says that in Exodus 27:20, "Ve'ata titzaveh et bnei Yisrael, vayikchu elecha shemen zayit zach, katit lamaor lahalot ner tamid." So God says to Moses, but doesn't say Moses' name. Moses doesn't appear by name anywhere in this parsha, which is fascinating, this sense of tzimtzum, that Moses, like the greatest teacher of all time, we don't need to know his name in this week's Torah portion, right? That you, ve'ata, in a way, it speaks to us as well. We can locate ourselves in that first verse of this Torah portion, ve'ata, and you, and all of us. So how do we build our lives or see our lives in this verse? You shall further instruct the Israelites to bring clear oil, that shemen zayit zach, clear, pure, beaten olive oil for lighting, for kindling the lamp, this ner tamid. When we move into our meditation a little more deeply, these are the words that I'd like us to focus on, that la me'or, illuminate, lahalot, elevate, ner tamid, eternal light. Right? So we can already start building that inner fire. So connecting the dots, moving down the page here, the Midrash makes a connection between the olive oil that's used for lighting the menorah and the first olive branch that is brought by that Yonah, by that dove that Noah sends after the flood. First, Noah sends out, when the waters start to recede, this orev, this raven, and it goes to and fro and doesn't find a place to land, but the dove finds a place to land, and it's the olive branch, bringing this pure, beautiful sign of life, sign of peace back to Noah. That is the symbol of the beginning of this new world, a new world that will be built on peace. So going down here, and the Israelites, the Midrash brings, are compared to the Yonah, to this bird, the dove that brings this olive branch. How? So if we can move down the page a little bit. So thank you. The Holy One, blessed be he, said, whoop, not that far. Just as the dove brought light, yes, just as the dove brought light to the world by bringing Noah an olive leaf or an olive branch, so you are compared to the dove and must bring olive oil and kindle lamps before me. So we're taking the mantle of that dove, bringing the olive branch to illuminate the world with the beaten, pure, unadulterated oil of the olive. Let's move down. This piece is then reflected upon by a beautiful teacher, Rabbi Sheldon Lewis, in this book called Torah of Reconciliation. I highly recommend it. And he says, in the narrative of Noah's Ark, it was the dove that brought back an olive branch, indicating that the flood had passed. Into a darkened world, the dove provides the means to rekindle a light. When instructions are given to build the tabernacle in the wilderness, lighting the eternal lamp with olive oil is given priority. The Midrash links the olive branch with its potential to fuel a light to the goal for the Jew, for all of us coming into this meditation, to become an illuminator. The prominence of the act of kindling a light for the tabernacle symbolizes the need to bring light by how one lives. The dove carrying the olive branch perhaps bears the message that peace will only come into an illuminated world in which there's no fear of one another, of which destruction is a thing of the past, that we see ourselves, imagine that, each and every one of us, as privileged to be the illuminators. It's not just the Kohen's job, the high priest's job. It is for all of us to bring that pure olive oil, to be that wick and the source, and invite that spark, which is that fire of the divine. So it reminded me of this piece that is a little bit more well-known, To Be a Lamplighter, which is attributed to the Lubavitcher Rabbi, and kind of the story of how Lubavitch came to, the Chabad movement came to this country and to all places. But it's really a piece, I read it, for all of us. That the Chassid asks the Rebbe, what is a Jew's task in the world? Right, for all of us who are taking on this practice of being peacemakers and illuminators, what is it? What do we do? And the Rebbe answered, a Jew is a lamplighter on the streets of the world. Just like in olden days, right, there was someone who went around and literally lit these lamps. The fire belonged to the city, but it was someone's job to go around and see what light needs to be awakened and to illuminate each of those, literally those light poles, street lamps, but a process is then mirrored within. So the Chassid says, how do you become a lamplighter? And the Rebbe says, one must begin with oneself, cleansing oneself with that shemen zayit zach, that pure oil, becoming more refined. And then one sees each other as also more refined, as pure, as light. And that is the true calling we learn, to be a lamplighter, to be an igniter of souls. So this brings us into the next piece. We could scroll down, which is really even past that. And this is a beautiful text that in your light, we see light. You can bring that into our meditation as well from Psalms. In your light, God is the source of light, but we hope to mirror that process of combustion within us. And then moving down to the last piece here, to bring into our meditation, we could already begin to settle in using these words as our prompt. Lama'or laha'alot ner tamid. How do we internalize this process of becoming that lamplighter, of becoming an illuminator in this world? We begin within our own hearts, with our own neshamas, with our own sense of self. And so the image I'd like to bring to you in this text from these last 4 words of the first verse, lama'or, to bring light, to see that light, and la'alot, to allow that light to grow within us, elevate, raise up, kind of fan out, ner tamid, to become this eternal light, even when we get up from this sit that we share together. So finding our feet connected to the ground, really getting grounded for this one. Allow the chest, if it's comfortable, to find a bit of uplift, shoulders relaxing away from ears, and notice if there's any tension in the body. Breathing some spaciousness wherever you are called to do so. Following the breath as the anchor. When the mind wanders, coming back to that breath as be the fan of the fire to keep that fire going, that divine neshama connection, that soul breath connection. Eyes could be closed, of course, or finding a gentle gaze. I love the feeling of holding a smile, as Pima Chadron has taught us, just a gentle reminder that we are happy, that we are calm, that we are present. And through the breath, dropping down to the heart space. And these next few moments, minutes on your own, minding that space in the heart center of an eternal flame. See yourself as your own illuminator and allowing that light within to elevate and to see it as constant, because it already is. Dropping your awareness into that eternal light within you, allowing that light to simply glow, uplift, elevate, connecting your source of light to divine light, to seeing the light that exists within each and every one of us. I'll bring us back together with a nigun in a few minutes. Lama o lehal ner tamid. Lama o lahalot ner tamid. Beginning to wiggle fingers and toes. Maybe open eyes if they've been closed. I invite you to bring your hands over the heart center as a reminder that this Ner Tamid is in us and it is in each other. And maybe it is our mission today, a kavanah, an intention to keep that Ner Tamid alive, glowing, sharing it with others and seeing it in others as well as in ourselves. Together, shalom 3 times. Shalom. 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 Releasing hands from heart. And this concludes our practice.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Danielle Upbin. It's beautiful teaching and practice. And as with our teachers, a beautiful presence. Thanks so much for bringing all of that. And friends, we seal the practice as we do each day by offering an opportunity for those of you who are in mourning, or if you're observing a yard site at this time, or if it's your custom to join in the Mourner's Kaddish, to do so and to put the name or names of those you're honoring today in the chat box now or after you recite Kaddish. And if you're not reciting Kaddish, you're invited just to stay present, stay with that practice of being a lamplighter, lifting up the light and acknowledging the light, including the light of those who have left this world, by creating a minyan of comfort and support for those who are. So if you are reciting Kaddish, I invite you to join me by rising in body or in spirit to recite the words together. And thanks to Kat for sharing the words on the screen. And if you're reciting Kaddish, you're invited to unmute at this time. Yitgadal, Yitkadash, Shemei Rabba, Yilma, Dibra, Chayefon, Uvyameson, V'yeh Dechol Beit Yisrael, Hagalah, Zman Kariv, Shmei Rabba Mivarach, V'nam Ulameh Ulamaya, Barach, V'yishtabach, Ar, V'yitamam, V'yishrei, Adar, V'yitale, V'yitchalav, Shmei Tekudusha, B'richu, Eila, Minchol, B'yirchatim, Ata, V'nechlamata, Ba'amiran, Ba'alma, Amavava, V'yishamaya, Naim, Aleinu, V'al Yisrael, Shalom Bimrotam, Yaseh Shalom Aleinu V'al Yisrael, Yalkol Yoshvei Tzargel, Imru, Amen. And friends, of course, thanks so much for joining us today. If you're leaving us now, we hope you'll join us tomorrow. We'll be light in practice from Tel Aviv by Rabbi Mira Neshama Weil, will be leading us tomorrow. And on Friday, of course, by Rebecca Schisler, who usually leads us to sit into Shabbat together on Fridays. So we hope to see you then if you're leaving us now. Um, Also, I didn't mention at the outset, but just a reminder that next week, Rebecca Schisler will be leading us in practice all week. It will be one of our monthly week-long deeper dives into practice, which means also that the sessions will be extended by another 15 minutes, just to let people know. And the theme next week, to honor the theme of Purim and the month of Adar, is playfulness and cultivating joy. So we hope you'll come have fun with us next week during the week of Purim, which, as I mentioned, is Monday night and Tuesday. Of course, everyone is always invited to stay on for conversation with our teacher for today, Rabbi Danielle Upbin, and to reflect on the practice, or if you'd like, just to use this time to continue to sit together with that beautiful teaching and practice. You're welcome to do that as well. If you do have a question, please put it in the chat box and preface it by writing question. And I will keep an eye on that. Danielle, that was just beautiful. And I see actually from the chat, you have some fans here from your My Jewish Learning set,
great.
which I mentioned, I think at the outset, it's on Tuesdays, right? Tuesdays, 10 a.m. So really glad to lift up that opportunity for those who are able to avail themselves of that. I wanted to, what I was really struck by, it's a beautiful teaching. And I love the image of the lamplighter. And it's interesting because, it's a twist, because we have this idea of, the Jewish people being or la goyim, right? Being a light to the nations, light to the world. I think people are very familiar with that idea, but this is really a little bit different, right? It's a different teaching. It's not about being, you kind of combined being the light or recognizing the light within us. But then where you wound up with the teaching was really focusing not so much on our own light, but like that analogy of being the lamplighter was the light's not ours. And really the task is to look for the light or make the light in others, more manifest in some way. So I just want to invite you to, maybe share a little bit more about that, or what you see as the connection between, as you pointed out, we start with ourselves, right? We start with our own Shemen Zayit, that pure olive oil, beaten olive oil within us. But we start with us, but we don't end with ourselves, really, I guess is what.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for that question. I think that there's so many ways into this verse and into the image that we can, God is commanding Moses to instruct the Israelites to bring their clear oil of beaten olives for lighting. So the fuel is coming from the Israelites. The action when the lamp is lit will come from the Kohen. So we can see ourselves as those who are helping to bring resources for light in the world. We can see ourselves as the ones who are lighting. We can see ourselves as part of the light. We can see ourselves as, because there are three parts to that verse, lama or, to light it, to lift it up, and to keep it going.
Right.
So there are like 5 or 6 different ways, every step requires the intention or the acknowledgement, awareness of there's a divine peace here. We can find our way in. And to sit on the outside and to appreciate the light, is maybe another, right? To see ourselves as sitting like that meta, kind of holding that space too, to see it in the world, to acknowledge it. The light in me acknowledges the light in you, right? Is another piece of awareness that we can bring to this. So I think that's why I maybe started one place, but ended somewhere else, because we can like jump rope. You can jump in here in like any of these words and feel like you can find like your heart space there.
Yeah. Can I invite you? This might be, sorry if this is too personal, but I want to invite you to share, if you would. I think it can be very helpful when people are sitting, especially if they're new to this, but even if they're not, to have a sense about like what's actually going on you know, when you're sitting, like you give that beautiful teaching. Um, can you describe what your process is like, including maybe, I don't know if you're like me, the mind drifts away, right, to other other less lofty subjects like what's for lunch or whatever. But maybe you can take us through like what the experience is like for you.
Sure. Well, we call it this a spiritual practice because we're practicing it. And some people have more practice than others. And we also have this kind of statement like practice makes permanent. We say practice makes perfect, but practice makes permanent. So when we try to refine, and using that image again from the Shemin Zayed Zach, refine the process for ourselves, we might have, different results. I'm currently taking a class with Yael Shai called That Flourish for women rabbis, and she offers it for everyone, anyone really. And it's a mindfulness practice. I know she's another IJS teacher so what I just learned from her or reminder is constantly coming back, constantly bringing it back. The mind wanders, bringing it back. And every time we become aware that that mind is wandering, like, oh, I've set up this like altar in my heart space. Let me take this
Mhm.
one for this meditation, for example.
Right.
Like if I were to sit with this, which I have this week, like setting up that altar, now it's and then bringing my awareness to this, literally like dropping. When we say drop your attention, like it's a
Mm.
funny statement, but it's like there's something like I don't even know what it is. It's like a physical, like drop your awareness,
Right.
like an elevator that
Hmm.
not God forbid, not dropping, but it's like a sinking down
Hmm.
and into that place. It's like living in that space. When I drop my awareness down to the place where the sole of foot meets the ground, like I feel a tingling sensation there. When I drop my awareness into the heart space, something opens up, like a child who's calling you, and they're finally you look at them like, yeah, and it's like, oh, like lighting up, like you see me, you hear me, you know me. Our heart does that too. It responds. So every time we redrop, oh, I went away, I'm gonna come back. That, I think, or what I understand, like that's where real work starts to take place. So for me, it's training myself to drop back again and again. And then when I'm really in it, what I feel, if that's what you're asking, I feel an
Yeah.
openness. I feel a spaciousness. I don't always feel it, but I know I'm in it when I feel that.
Hmm.
And like that's the gushy, the gooey, the openness, the like scary sometimes, because it's like, I want to stay here. I
Hmm.
want to do this. So then how do you bring that feeling of this into moment to moment? Like, I don't want to say in real life, but
Hmm.
in
Hmm.
active, not sitting life. To me, that's my biggest challenge. Bringing that back, bringing that feeling and that awareness and that comfy, gushy, open, wow moment that I
Hmm.
return to again into like, oh, now we're having a conversation. Oh, now we're eating lunch. Oh, now I'm picking up my kids from school. To
Hmm.
me, that's the work I'm trying to do.
That's great.
Yeah,
I mean, that's a thanks for being vulnerable and for just letting us into your inner process. And I think for me, I know that's very helpful. For others, I'm sure it is as well. Harris put in the chat a thought about about bringing it to life, like you were describing, like, okay, this was great. Now what? Like on the whatever mundane daily tasks are out there or not so mundane. So Harris wrote, by being, how can we be lamplighters with those with whom we interact each day, by being there fully with them in the moment, listening and then responding not just to the words, but to the heart within, and supporting their light no matter how strong or weak. That was another part I thought that was beautiful about this and really helpful, is that it acknowledges that there are many times when we can't access that light within us and depend on others to see it. I don't remember, maybe you remember offhand, but we in our clergy program, there's one of the primary Hasidic texts, it might be Rabbi Nachman, I don't remember, but about finding the nikudot tovot, finding the good points, finding the nitzot, the sparks in each person, even when it's hard, and even when it might be hard for them to find them, which is just another kind of analogy to your teaching today about being a lamplighter, being a spark finder, or a light lifter upper. So hopefully they're among us today. I'm sure there are people who could not really, easily access the light.
Yeah. Mark, can I comment on that?
Sure.
Yeah, that's the Rabbi Nachman, the Azamra piece. Well, it comes up in different ways, but as a prayer leader, is standing up there, looking for these little lights, these little sparks in everybody, and then bringing all of those sparks to these little holy points of light, of like imagine the whole kehillah, the whole congregation, this whole Zoom, that each of us can be that one who's now stringing like those little points of light into notes. They become musical notes, and all of our little points of light become a song.
Right.
And what does that sound like? What does that look like? What does that feel like? To look for it, even when it's, it's hard to find. Keep looking because it's there within ourselves and in others.
Yeah. Well, I know you also serve as a, Shlichat Tzibur, as a prayer leader. And it's really beautiful to see how like this teaching today, you bring that into that process as well, which is not something we get to talk about so often. So speaking of turning it into song, maybe we can end, if you don't mind, if you're comfortable going back to that phrase that you sang, that you brought us out with, that nigun, which I don't know. I'm assuming it's your nigun. Yes, your melody. Or
yeah,
no?
On the spot. What do these words feel like right now?
We all can do that.
Sure, yeah, however it comes out. But the words I could put them in the chat if it's helpful, or
yeah, that'd be great.
So lama or, and then le, ha, a, lot, and then ner, and then tamid. So we'll see if it's spell checked it, but it's good enough. Okay. So lama or, laha'alot, ner tamid. And if the words aren't coming out, it's the intention that we bring together. So let's. Lama or, laha'alot, ner tamid. Lama or lehalot ner tamid. Two more times. Lama or lalot ner tamid. Lama or lalot ner tamid. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much, Danielle. That was just beautiful. Thanks to all of you. Thanks to Kat, of course, for holding our space as always so beautifully. Thanks to each of you for your beautiful devotion to this practice, and being a ner tamid, being consistent and devoted practitioners and supporters of this community. And Danielle, welcome aboard. So wonderful to have you. I know everyone really appreciated this today, and hopefully to have you back soon. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Be well, everyone. Hope to see you tomorrow to practice with Rabbi.